Gucci, Gucci 2 times, say it 2 times. Gucci, Gucci 2 times, say it 2 times. Gucci, Gucci 2 times.
Here's an example of the media not actually telling the truth. Donald Trump spoke in Florida over the weekend, another one of these big rallies, and the media went crazy over the big rally. Oh, look at Trump having a big rally. He's got a mess of an administration. Why is he having... Okay, Barack Obama never stopped campaigning. He had rallies all the time. No big deal. So Trump goes to this rally, and Trump speaks at the rally. And at the rally, Trump says this about Sweden.
Here's the bottom line. We've got to keep our country safe. You look at what's happening. We've got to keep our country safe. You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
Okay, so the media went off on this. The media suggested that this was because Donald Trump was suggesting some sort of terrorist attack had happened in Sweden, because he mentions Germany, and then in context he also mentions a couple of other, he mentions Nice and France. Okay, if you listen to that, does that sound to you like he's talking about a terror attack, or does it sound like they're just having serious problems with Muslim immigrants in Sweden? It sounds to me more like the latter, right? It doesn't sound to me like he's just talking about a terror attack in Sweden. So there are a bunch of members of the media, like the social lead for CNBC. He says, Trump discussing terror seamlessly mentions incident last night in Sweden. There was no incident in Sweden last night. So Trump is inexact in his language, as always, and he should be more careful about his language because, come on, you're the president of the United States. The Swedish Twitter account promptly began trolling him, saying that they wanted to know if the United States had any aid to provide for the terrorist attack last night in Sweden and all this. The fact is, when you look at that, what Trump's actually saying, he was talking about a Fox News report that happened on Friday night, because Trump gets his news just from Fox News. So he was watching a Fox News report in which a friend of mine named, well, now I'm forgetting his name, actually, but Ami Horowitz. Ami is actually a friend of mine. And Ami was doing and Ami went over and did a report in Sweden about the nature of Muslim immigration in Sweden. He was on Tucker Carlson's show, and he talked about how it had created high levels of crime, how Sweden was having serious problems with anti-Semitism, all of which is absolutely true. And so this report was on Fox News on Friday night. He talked about how Sweden is now the official rape capital of Europe. And Trump saw that, and that's what he's referring to. That's what he's referring to, right? And so the left went nuts. They suggested that he was talking about how this was all, you know, just a fake. How this was. He had mentioned a terrorist attack. A terrorist attack. A media ran a headline that said, "Did Trump think there was an attack in Sweden because of a Tucker Carlson segment?" Again, this film from Ami Horowitz documents Sweden's open door policy where refugees are concerned. He talks about the Swedish government trying to cover up the the surge in crime. And so Trump, because this is what he does, he was sort of half watching TV, and he took away from it that some attacks must have happened in Sweden. But was this Trump saying there was a massive terror attack in Sweden? No, that's not what he was saying in the slightest. The media botched it. They got it wrong, and then they blew it out of proportion, as always. This is a case where both sides are going to accuse the other side of lying. People on the left are going to say Trump talked about a terror attack. He sort of kind of did. And people on the right are going to say he didn't really talk about a terror attack because he really kind of didn't. So, you know, again, what would be nice is if we all just said Trump botched the language here, but he wasn't talking about a Swedish terrorist attack. Here's what he was talking about. Is it a big deal? No. But the media have to jump on him. That is an element of media dishonesty. This week, the media blew up over President Trump's allegations last Friday night at a rally that there had been some sort of terrible event in Sweden. He said, quote, last night. They suggested that Trump had mentioned a phantom terror attack in the same way Kellyanne Conway mentioned the Bowling Green massacre and Sean Spicer referenced a terror attack in Atlanta that never happened. Here's what Trump actually said in his speech. We've got to keep our country safe. You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems they never thought possible. This is a near-perfect example of how Trumpian rhetoric polarizes the electorate. Why? Because Trump was wrong to say something had happened in Sweden last night. Nothing had happened that night. But he was absolutely right to point out increased crime problems among Muslim immigrants to Sweden. Conservatives reacted to Trump's comments by pretending that Trump had never used the phrase last night. Leftists pretended nothing terrible had ever happened in Sweden, ever, ever, ever. Then Last night, news broke of a Muslim immigrant rally. This is from the local newspaper. Sweden's capital was plunged into chaos on Monday as police were forced to fire at rioters after violence erupted in an area described as high risk. The terrifying scenes took place just hours after the country's Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, slammed Donald Trump for claiming Sweden was in crisis as a result of its liberal refugee policy. Stockholm police were forced to fire a shot into the rampaging crowd in the hard-hit suburb of Rinkeby after a mob of around 30 thugs started attacking the officers with rocks. Violence erupted after the police had tried to arrest a wanted person on the subway. Here's the thing. Sweden does have a serious problem with rising rates of rape correlating with increased immigration from Muslim countries. As Joe Curl of Daily Wire points out, quote, there were 66.5 cases of reported rapes per 100,000 inhabitants last year. That's triple, right? It's up from 24.9 in 2003. It's one heck of a jump. Even ABC News was forced to acknowledge that Trump wasn't entirely wrong. This is from ABC News. Last year, 112,645 violent crimes were reported in Sweden, an increase from 108,739 in 2015, 108,071 in 2014, and 104,738 in 2013, according to the Swedish National Council for Crime Prevention. Those numbers include attempted murder, muggings, and rape, but not other types of sexual assault and murder, the council said. And this is from one of the mayors of one of the towns. He said the police reports don't have a box you tick about whether it's a Swedish citizen or an immigrant. The council looks instead at a number of factors, according to ABC News. The council looks at a number of social factors, including income and education, but not immigration status or ethnicity. Trump rightly tweeted, give the public a break. The fake news media is trying to say that large-scale immigration in Sweden is working out just beautifully. Not, all capital letters, like we're in 1993. Malmö, Sweden, has turned into a hotbed for anti-Semitism thanks to rising Muslim immigration. Here's Fox News on the rising problem of violence in Malmö. Last month, the police chief for the southern Swedish city of Malmö issued a desperate plea for help, curtailing a plague of attempted murders, beatings, and rapes. About 32% of Malmö's occupants are migrants, although it is not clear what role migrants play in the crime wave. We cannot do it on our own, Chief Stefan Sintius wrote in an open letter about the upward spiral of violence. Malmö had 52 hand grenade attacks in 2016 alone, a jump from 48 attacks in 2015, according to figures provided by the Swedish Police Authority. You want to know why conservatives don't trust the media? It's because of media overreach, suggesting that when conservatives get a specific wrong, but the general right, the general is also wrong. That's not an excuse for Trump to make silly mistakes. He's the president. But it does demonstrate why conservatives are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt so long as he's talking about real problems the left refuses to contemplate.
Ambassador, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Tucker.
So it seems we've just been talking about what the actual crime numbers are, and I don't know if we're really going to get to the truth of it, but it does seem clear to me that there is legitimate concern about it in Sweden, whether or not the average person feels free to express that. And one of the ways we know that is because the government itself said recently, wow, too many people are coming into this country and there's a social cost to this. If the wave of refugees and immigrants wasn't a problem, why would they slow it down as they have?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Tucker, I'm here for two reasons. One is that I think facts matter. People make decisions based on what they believe to be true, and those decisions have consequences now more than ever when there is so much misinformation. And we have a president that takes advantage of a wide range of resources, and you should be privileged to be one of them in giving him information to make important policy decisions for our country. So it's really important, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue with you. I saw your show earlier, and I thought it was great when you talked about that we need to move beyond, let's say, that you mentioned the personality of the president or the tweets, and we need to talk about the core issues, and we need to figure out how to have a lot of people come here and how to have them invested in our country. I thought those were really great questions. So I think that, what's really interesting to me, you had some great guests, and the Swedish journalist that you had, I think she got in the details of these statistics enough that I really want to say I can certainly get into the weeds on this with you. For the last 2 years, I've been steeped in this very much. I've seen statistics and reports and numbers, and I would just point out that none of what I have seen backs up the claims that Mr. Horowitz has made in the interview that he had with you, and I watched it twice, and I tried to listen for specific evidence or sources that he would state, and I didn't hear that. Perhaps I missed it, but it seemed to me that it was more anecdotal.
I don't think you did. No, actually, he gave statistics from the Swedish National Council, which I think is part of the Ministry of Justice there, unless
Not this one. I'm talking about the earlier. I'm talking about the earlier interview from which the president
that suggested that there's been an absolute rise in reported crimes, in arrests. And these rape stats are real. And I know people said, well, that's because somehow the women are including rapes from before. Okay, maybe that's true. I'm not an expert in Swedish crime stats, but the overall crimes have gone up 1.5 million in a year.
Well, I don't think it's for me to talk. I think we can sit here and talk about Swedish rape stats. And as your guest just pointed out, I think that one of the reasons, and I'm not an expert on Swedish rape stats, but I do know that a lot of the statistics, the crime rate has not skyrocketed, as has been claimed.
Okay.
And one of the reasons among many that those rape stats may be high, again, I'm not an authority on that, is because Sweden encourages people to come forward.
Okay, but it's not just.
Let me move on from that for a minute,
sorry,
because I think that.
No, I'm sorry, Ambassador. I don't want you to filibuster. You just said that facts matter, and so I just threw out that the overall crime rate has gone up 1.5 million crimes in a year. Now, maybe that has nothing to do with the refugees flooding into the country, but the truth remains that the government, the Prime Minister, have said point blank, it's just too many people. We can't handle it. And so I wonder why it's so controversial for Americans to note that this is a problem, when the Swedish government itself is saying that.
Absolutely. So you nailed this right now. So that's what I want to get to, because it's really interesting to me that for the last 2 days we've been talking about Sweden. And we're talking about this, and I think what the real conversation is, what we're really saying, this is a conversation about security, it's about fear, and it's about misunderstanding, and it's about us. And we are talking about Sweden because what we're really talking about is, could this happen to us? And I can tell you that Sweden takes care. Sweden is a wonderful country. It's. I can go on about it. Ranks highest in the industrial competitors, all that. Okay, and they have their challenges, and they have taken a lot of people, and they're dealing with the challenges. But that does not mean that that is somehow related to migrants. When you take so many people, we're never going to be Sweden. Sweden has taken about 200,000 people, over the last 3 years, proportion to our population. If we were to take that many people, we would have taken 6 to 7 million refugees in this
I get
country.
it, but hold on. I'm running out of patience a tiny bit, Ambassador, because you're not getting to the core of it here, which is...
What does this have to do with us, is what I'm saying. Even if what everybody's saying, that the sensationalism is true, about Sweden, crime,
Here's why it has to do with us, because the left in Sweden and the United States has exactly the same response, which is anybody who has any qualm about this, A, better shut up. In Sweden, you can face prosecution, or B, is simply just a racist. You're a bigot if you don't like it. And my point is, there are real reasons not to like it. You don't have to be a bigot not to like it. There are social costs and economic costs to this, and nobody on the left wants to admit it, and I don't know why. It's very patronizing and it's very annoying to have to lie in order to meet some standard.
Address that. Again, when Mr. Horowitz was having that interview with you initially, he was saying, well, many people are saying this, or I went to some swanky party and people were yelling at me. Let me tell you one thing, that actually made me crack up a little bit. That is suspicious to me. Swedes don't yell, particularly in swanky parties. So I don't know where he's getting his information.
I'll answer this. The Sweden Democrat, the party that was considered so right-wing and fringe 10 years ago is now vying for second place. Its support has doubled in the past 2 years. Why is that?
You want to talk about core issue. This is another country. We're talking about the politics and the demographics and the challenges of another country. Why aren't we talking about any other country? Why are we talking about Sweden?
We
what
could
does this have to do with
France.
us?
We could talk about Germany or Belgium or Great Britain. I mean, it's all of a piece, obviously.
End?
It's obvious
when I was
because
in Sweden,
it's a template for what's happening here. That's why, as you all know, and most voters do.
That's what I'm trying to say. Well, that's what I started out by saying. Let's talk about the core issues. We're talking about this because we think it has something to do with us.
Okay, I'm sorry. We are out of time, and I wish we'd gotten more to the points here, Ambassador, but I appreciate your expertise in coming on tonight. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.